Hey everybody, it's your girl Tawana B with Now Your Normal Conversation. Hello, hello, and happy Monday. I hope everybody had a blessed weekend. I hope you all enjoyed the weekend. I'm sure it wasn't long enough for you. It definitely wasn't long enough for me. So I can say that. I guess I'll speak for the collective that it was just not a long enough weekend. So today, my special guest is Christopher Conway, and he is the owner and operator of Out for Good. And Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here, finally to get you here to talk to you about your program and why you decided to open this program.
Okay, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this platform with you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. And good
Thank
evening to your audience.
you.
Yeah.
So we'll just dive right into it. How about if we do that? And you don't, just so you know, our conversation is going to be like the one we had at the event, just straightforward. That's the way I like to do things because then you'll give me the real you and you'll
Right.
give me all the tea on your program. And that's what we need, especially in the communities. We need more programs like yours. So I'm going to applaud you for this because I actually read how long you've been doing this. And before I met you, I did not know that this program existed. So,
Okay.
so that means that we need to share more and we need
Right.
to know more about what's in our community to help our loved ones and our families and even people that we don't know. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about why you decided to open up Out for Good? What was your motivating factor in saying, "Hey, I'm going to take this on because this is a big program and it's a big assignment."
Right. So me myself, I'm a walking testimony of Out for Good. So I kind of like my program came from me. I was once incarcerated myself. I served several years in different facilities across Massachusetts, and every time I got out, depending on where I was at in my life, like the last bid and the second bid, nobody was there for me. And I remember, the CO was giving me my check and all my belongings. And when I, walked out the gate of the Department of Corrections or the House of Corrections, I had a plastic bag and I either looked to the left or looked to the right, and no one was there for me. And then when I tried to reach out for services, to try to get back on my feet and try to, be a productive member of society, there was always two words that came up, and those two words was waiting list. There was always a waiting list at some type of program that provided reentry services to returning citizens to Massachusetts and the greater Boston area. So on my last incarceration, I was fortunate enough to be in a facility with someone that I grew up with, which is a guy by the name of True C Allah. And
I know True C,
yeah,
yes.
and he pulled me to the side and told me like, I'm gonna show you how to get out of here, you know and get home back to your family. So he introduced me to this program called 121, and 121 was in the South Bay Correctional Facility,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was doing an 18-month sentence. So I did went to 121, and 121 was a reentry program inside the facility, and 121 was actually the start of Out for Good because they provided me with the skills like computer skills, how to write a resume, things like that that are preparing you to re-enter back into society. So if I had to say where the seed was planted for Out for Good, I would say in South Bay Jail in Unit 121.
Right. So
Yeah.
I actually was in South Bay myself, so I'm very familiar with True C. He worked with the men, but I do know his brother, so I'm very familiar with the work that he does and the work he does in the community. And I know that for you, there must have been some type of determination because you have lived experience. And sometimes when I see people in these programs or open up these programs, I say, I wonder how many people will listen to them, or I wonder how many people will stick and stay. It's kind of like seeing a therapist. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if I like this therapist because they haven't been through the things that you've been through. You, in
Right.
fact, have been through some things, and then you got out and you finally open up Out for Good. And so
Right.
this is a game changer because not only do you have knowledge and you have resources, but you have personal experience about the struggle of addiction and of everything else. So what was it like for you?
So
The
there's a
first,
piece that there's a piece after that, because when I got out, I still see there's another piece that is sometimes it's really not the resources, because one of the philosophies for Out for Good is that we can give people housing, jobs, and all these other things to get them on the right track. But if their mental health is not intact, then they're gonna lose all that stuff more than likely, 80% of the time. So when I did get out, um, I still went back to the foolishness and the ignorance until a good friend of mine that also grew up with me. His name is Ishmael Williams. He pulled me to the side. But I was in school. One thing I can say about 121, they helped me get into schools, and I was went through mass rehab and got a stipend to go to Cambridge College to the substance abuse addiction counseling program. So I was still doing that, but I was still in the streets because my mind wasn't right. So a
right.
good friend of mine, Ishmael Williams, pulled me to the side, and they had an organization called Pyramid Builders, and he,
Mm.
got me into Pyramid Builders, and from Pyramid Builders, that's where I really took off.
Now, I think when we had our conversation at the event, I said to you the two things that we'll continue to struggle with until we get the proper resources is mental health and housing.
Yeah, yeah,
If
you did
your
say
mental
that.
if your mental health is not intact, you will lose a job. I don't care how good the job is. If your mental
Right,
health is not intact, you will lose visits with your children. You really have to be stable mentally in order for anything else to work as a returning citizen. And that's a fact.
right.
And I recognize it even in myself because I told you this was my last incarceration. And I just got an email from my probation officer today saying that I'm ending one probation, that I've never completed probation. And
Oh
out of the
wow.
14 years that I've been incarcerated, I have never completed probation. Right. So,
Yeah.
but there was a component that the judge stuck into my probation stipulations. And although I had started going to mental health counseling while I was in Framingham, he wanted me to continue. And usually I rebel against the system, but I recognized that he was onto something and that I needed to continue to see a therapist or I was going to be in trouble.
Hmm.
If you're not mentally stable, you're not going to make it. And so,
Trauma,
how did your
traumas
right,
from we. It's like I can say we because we were in the streets for so long. I know for me,
right,
I was in the streets for majority of the time. Generational dysfunction. My family was criminals. My grandfather, my grandmother was a criminal. My grandmother got killed. Execution style. So my whole family was into negativity, and
right,
I grew up under all that trauma. So for now, for me to
mm,
go to school and get a job, I'm still gonna have that trauma unless it's addressed. And more than
right.
likely, I can go right back to things I normally do and are accustomed to doing because that was my life.
Right. And so we when we think about trauma, we don't it's not just being in prison, but it's things that led you to prison. And even
Mhm.
and more so, I think that the biggest challenge with the mental health component is that we see more and more of it in the prisons, but not only do they not know how to address it, but when you get out, you're on a wait list. Like you said, it's hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out, I'm going to get a therapist, and now I have to wait. Now I have to wait to talk to somebody. Now I have to wait to let them know that I'm not in a good space because I'm home. I don't have a job. I can barely see my kids. I don't have housing. And then you
Hmm.
sink right back down the rabbit hole because you don't have the one component that can change the game for everything around you. So, how does your program Out for Good fit into that? Because Out for Good, those are strong words. I could use
Hmm.
those words today. Out for Good is something that you think about and you say that for good means forever. So,
Right.
what does your program offer as far as mental health that could keep us out for good?
So, in addition, so I did a lot of work on, myself and, clearing up the records of my past. And one of the things I did do was I finished, a bachelor's program and a
Mm,
master's program from Cambridge
wow,
College.
good
So I
for you.
have a master's degree in psychology, and I am also a licensed alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Massachusetts. So I'll be able to address or help people that have substance abuse issues, with the underlying issue of anxiety, PTSD, or depression. But if someone comes to me with strictly, depression, PTSD, or anxiety, I can't use that as a primary diagnosis. I have to, refer them out to, certain agencies that I work with that, will be able to help them address those issues. But if they come to me for anything that has to do with substance abuse issues, more than likely there's always going to be underlying mental health disorder. So I can
Right.
also address the underlying piece, but substance abuse has to be the primary.
So your program, does it strictly deal with those that are on substances, or is it
Right.
for people coming out of prison who
Both.
may need services? Both.
Right.
Right.
So it started when I first started my agency. It was, this was my first logo right here, which is, getting out of jail and then, coming in and going to college. That was out for good. And then when I got my master's degree and my license, I had to switch it around to, cater towards what I have my license in, not
Right.
taken away from the reentry. The reentry is always going to be there because that's my passion. And,
Right.
I got people now that I work with that come home from doing 14 years, and one of the things they do go to is substance abuse. So that you work with that population also, or someone like I got a couple clients that are exonerated, and that's a lot of trauma that they're going through, and sometimes they go
Absolutely.
towards alcohol and drugs.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question because I'm sure you see this a lot in your line of profession and just in your personal life when you were incarcerated. There's someone in the chat that's actually asking a very interesting question. Ivy Sweeting asks, how do we help to reduce the stigma of mental health in the Black and Brown community?
Oh wow. So
Interesting.
right. And that's one of the I don't know if a lot of people heard about Pyramid Builders Associates. A lot of it was the first black owned mental health clinic in Massachusetts, because what their philosophy was is more people will start coming out addressing their mental health if they were talking to more people that look like them. See?
Mm,
Now, a lot of people might not want to talk to, a therapist that, can't relate to them culturally, or, have walked in their shoes. So one of the ways I think we can break the stigma is, talking to more people that look like us. Whether it doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a clergy. It could be someone that you trust in or confide in. Because all therapy is you have the ability to get something off your chest and talk to someone that you trust. Because there's all types of therapy. Sometimes I talk to people, and if they don't like talking to someone, there's also therapy where you can write something down. That's also therapeutic. Dancing is therapeutic. Art
right.
is therapeutic. So those are ways to break stigmas.
Do you think that if we in the Black and Brown community found more people that look like us, that we would get more help? Because I find that in the Black and Brown communities, the first thing we say is, "Ah, that's for white people. We don't need therapists. That's not for us." But we find ourselves down that rabbit hole more often than not due to mental health issues that we don't address because we stay silent because we don't think it's for us. Do you think the reason why it's like that is because we don't see enough Black and Brown therapists?
Well, I think we're coming out more. I think we're coming out more, to start talking about mental health, because there's a lot of entertainers, stars that, have suffered with mental health, and, have written books about mental health. And sometimes, people that are of stature, when they start talking about stuff, seems like people listen.
When you started doing this work, Chris, when you decided to open up Out for Good, did you find that most of the people that came through those doors mirrored some of your story, if not all?
Exactly. Yep. And, to speak to that, a lot of the stuff that when you start digging, something that therapists have to do is a biopsychosocial or an assessment. And what that is we're digging into the life of that client, asking them things about their childhood, asking them things about their physical, their family history of psychiatric problems, their social life, any medications they've been on, and any
Mhm.
developmental delays they may have had. So, and a lot of times you see that a lot of stuff that happens to people, yeah, you can go back and see that it's something that happened when they were younger.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how many people can you service at a time in your program?
Well, I have about 15 clients I'm seeing now, and we just got a grant from one of the one of our sponsors to provide, substance abuse groups. We're going to try to do something, population on the mass and cast population to see how we can, go down there and help some of, our brothers and sisters in any way to, just wants to receive some services.
It's funny that you talk about mass and cast because that was one of the things I was going to ask you. How do you feel about mass and cast and what's going on there?
So there was a movie, there was a TV show a long time ago called The Wire, and I think that's where
Mm-hmm.
they got the idea from. And then The Wire, um, what the police department did was they zoned drug activity because they couldn't, control it. So they zoned it where everything was legal, and I think that's what's happening now. And, as far as mass and cast is that, you know, they know what's going on, but it's a thing called harm reduction where,
Yeah.
it's okay to, do something long as it's, monitored and, what do they call it? Surveys and things like that to show that, it's working. So their probably logic is for it is that, if we can zone them down here, we could probably watch them and get a, better understanding of who they are. And I think if they really want to clean that up, that area, I think they can really clean it up. But, I don't know.
Now, you say zoning. To me, it's a death trap. I've been down there. I go bring supplies, food, and what I noticed is that I watched the Boston Police. I've actually talked to some of them and asked them why are you here? There's too many people getting hurt down here. People are almost getting hit by cars. They're doing everything that they would do if you weren't here. So why are you here? Are you here just to watch the show? Because that's what it
Yeah,
seems like to me. It doesn't seem like you really are interested in saving any of these people. In fact, you think it's funny. I videotaped a police officer laughing at a woman who almost got hit by a car.
that's
And
a
I, and I,
shame.
and I say that, a lot of times until it touches us, until it touches our home, where somebody becomes an addict that we didn't know was an addict, or somebody dies of an overdose, or it's just like with anything else, until it touches us personally, we seem to not care as a community.
Right.
So your program is in the community here to service the Black and Brown community. And how much pushback do you get about your program? In the fact that you do, I see a lot of programs out here where there's a mixture of people, mostly white people, but it's rare that I see programs like yours and like Stacy's. You don't find those. You don't find a lot of Black owned, operated programs like this. And so I'm interested in what the community can do to help you become even bigger. And more importantly, spread the word about who you are, where you are, and how we can get people to you. Because I've seen a lot of people just die, Chris. I've
Right.
watched the pass and cast. They don't. Nobody seems to care. But because of your lived experience and things that you've been through, your outlook and the way that you look at people are different than just a normal person who's never been through anything, but it's their job.
Right.
So at this point, mass and cast is more than a disaster. Taking down the tents, that didn't do anything. They thought taking down the tents would stop them. And in fact, they seem to be more of them down there than when they had the tents up.
Right.
So
It's
you,
crazy down there.
right. So you as a social worker and a substance abuse counselor, can you just speak to what you would like to see happen for mass and cast and the people
Can I
down?
can I ask you a small favor? You and your audience, I have to go open the door. I should have been opened it, but I have to just go open it 2 seconds.
Sure, no worries.
Please check out the logo while I'm gone. 2 seconds.
We will. Yes, Ivy. The circle cycle of hospitals, homeless shelters, and jails that yes, it is very eye opening to see how, and now it's funny because back when I was in South Bay, um, there wasn't really mass and cast. I mean, people were out there, not like they are today. But now you see that there's a bigger cycle and you see this big circle, and it all ends up in the same spot. So, I definitely have believed, I don't know if I would have ever recognized it had I not been in South Bay, that there is the detox, the shelter, the morgue, the hospital,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
everything right there.
all designed and it's
So you just
all
say
set up for failure.
thank you for allowing me to go open the door
No
for my
worries. No worries at all.
family member. So back in the days, everything was downtown. Oh, we can go even further back. Let's go back to the combat zone. Like when
Oh,
my father was out there, everything
right,
was downtown, right?
right.
Even some of the when I was in the game, a lot of things were downtown. So what
Yep.
it was is they pushed things up. So now from downtown, it went to Pine Street Inn. That's where a lot
Mhm.
of stuff was hanging. People were hanging out, using and stuff like that. Pine Street Inn, and then
Yep.
it moved up to Molina Cass. That's where
Hmm.
people were hanging out on the Molina Cass. That had the tents out there. Now everything is right there, where at the shelter. But before that, there was a Long Island shelter, and a lot of stuff that you can do and you couldn't see was out in Long Island. But once
Right,
they closed that shelter down, all that traffic moved out to what you see right there, Mass and Gas.
right. So, but I think the problems, like, so you moved, so the Long Island shelter no longer exists, right? So the people that you see would still be in a state of emergency, because to me, this is a state of emergency,
Yeah.
what I'm saying. So I basically, some say, well, these programs don't really work. And they really don't help people because they end up back in the same spot that they were in when they started. There, I was speaking to someone, Chris, and I honestly said, you know, actually a senator, I said, this is, if people don't want to get off the street, you can't force them, right? But come on, Chris, let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, probably more than half of the population down there has a warrant. We can save their life somehow. We can get them cleaned up and send them out of wherever they're at with a serious plan.
I
Because at
wonder I wonder,
this,
do they ever have any community meetings about what's going on down there at Mass and Cass? Like business owners coming out complaining, all surrounding, how people that live down there coming out there complaining, and like what's really being done from the Boston Police Department, the governor, and the mayor to say, hey, enough is enough. Because back in the days when I was, doing my crime, they used to have these things called sweeps, and they'll
yeah,
come by with 4 or 5 paddy wagons and just load everybody up in it and take everybody down to the station for processing. They don't do sweeps no more. Seems like they don't want to do the work. Is what it looks like.
Chris, I think it goes beyond that. I think if we think past that, we'll see that Boston police officers get time and a half. They get overtime for sitting there and watching people make fools of themselves because they're not in their right frame of mind. And more
Right.
importantly, I call them by name. Governor Charlie Baker, Mayor Wu, and Suffolk County Sheriff Tompkins have done a poor job of helping these people in the community to be safe. I truly
Uh-huh.
understand that the only way that people will change is they have to have the mindset to change. But when you're not in your right mind, someone has to guide you. And jail is not always the answer.
No,
But it seems
definitely
like
not.
death may be the only answer for a lot of these people if we don't help them. So you're asking, what does the mayor and and Governor Baker and Suffolk County DA and the police. Listen, I've talked to the Boston police and I don't like the cops. You know what they tell me? Well, everyone passes the buck. It's like a circle. We think it's the Suffolk County Department's job to deal with this. They think that it's the mayor's job to deal with this. The mayor thinks that it's the governor's job to deal with this. So you know what happens? Nothing gets done.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's definitely a safety issue, so it should be, the responsibility of the, police department to clean that area up, and the governor and the, heads of authority in Massachusetts.
Come on, Chris. Let's take it a step further. If this was a crack epidemic,
Right.
the police would have been down there full force because it would have been a
Right.
whole bunch of black people down there.
And
And they
that's what I
would have
mean
called
by
it,
sweeps.
right.
That's when they
And they
used to
would
do
have,
the sweeps.
right. And they would have called it loitering back then.
Right.
But
Right.
now that heroin is an epidemic that's for white people,
Right.
they let it go down the way that they do.
Exactly. You know.
So your program right now, you say that you help about 15 people. Shoot, I see hundreds of people down in Mass and Cass. And so how many people can you help in your, what's the capacity
So
for
we
Alpha?
just we just this year. So this year, because I was doing Out for Good part time, and I was working in corporate America part time. So January 1st, 2022, I walked out of corporate America and I started to just focus on Out for Good. So we
Right.
launched launched Out for Good Behavior Services, which is a nonprofit organization which would allow us the funding to expand our programming, and we can help
So
more people.
are you the only staff in your program
No,
as of right now? Is there,
we
you
have
have more?
Yeah, we have, there's a couple of licensed mental health counselors on staff, a psychiatrist, people that are on call. Like I have people that I refer out to. We have, a board of 7. Stacy's on our board. We have other couple of people that, are involved in Reentry that have organizations in Massachusetts that are on our board. So we're really looking to expand for 2022 with the nonprofit piece. We just got our first grant actually today. We got a grant,
Praise
just
God.
like I just mentioned earlier, for the, go down Mass and Cass, and do some psychoeducation to try to, bring people into, some type of group setting where we can provide them with some services on, not harm reduction, but relapse prevention.
What do you think about harm reduction, Chris? Honestly.
It's a crutch, it's a band-aid. You know, see, a lot of people don't realize that to heal a wound, it goes from the inside out, and if you put a band-aid over, it's never going to heal. And I believe that's all harm reduction is you're putting a band-aid over something, and it's never going to heal. So you got to work just like on self. You got to work from the inside out. Else, there's a term in the halls of recovery. You're going to be a dressed-up garbage can if you're not working on the inside. So you work from the
Absolutely.
inside out. I
Absolutely.
know harm reduction. I really don't believe in it because it's like it's okay to use, but there's some harm reduction I do believe in if it's if the client is taking it right as prescribed. So that's MAT, which is medicated assisted treatment, which is the Suboxone and the methadone. That works for some people. Some people can function off that without using heroin. So
Right.
that part of the harm reduction I agree with, that piece. But the piece where they're just turning a blind eye to people shooting poison into their arm and calling that harm reduction, no, I don't believe in that.
What do you think about the needle exchange?
That's a good question. That's kind of like saying it's okay to hear. And if that it's also they're passing out works with, they have packages that they give out with the cap. I don't know if they still do it with the cap, the tie off, the matches. They pass these kits out like, so I don't know.
You're
I
on
would
the
have to
fence
say
about
I
it?
would have to say no, because that's just saying it's okay to use in safety. So I would say no.
Right.
I
And
don't believe
so their logic to doing this is saying, well, we don't want to continue to allow people to get HIV or hepatitis or any of these things. So we're keeping them safe while we're
that.
allowing them to push poison through their veins. And so that's why I was really curious as to what your take was on harm reduction in the needle exchange, because to me, they go hand in hand. I don't think that pushing poison into your body is, there's no form of harm reduction. What does that mean exactly? And who came up with this name?
Well, I
Harm
think I think
reduction.
once fentanyl came into the game, I think harm reduction should have been taken off the table, right?
Absolutely,
Because
Chris.
now you're saying it's okay to shoot fentanyl, because there's no, let's just be perfectly transparent. There's no heroin on the streets these days. There's not heroin that these people are getting high off. It's fentanyl, and
Hmm.
people are dying by the boatload. So once the fentanyl came into play, I think they should have did away with harm reduction. Say it's no longer safe to pass out needles, because you're actually saying here go a bag of death. Go get high and die.
Exactly. That is exactly what they're saying. So now here we have Out for Good. And now you just got a grant today. Congratulations. I'm really happy to hear that. I would jump up and down, but I threw my back out this weekend. So that's not happening. But I'm really proud of you, Chris, for continuing to push forward because I'm sure that there's been more closed doors than open doors for you since you started Out for Good. Am I right?
All right, exactly,
What do you think
definitely.
about that? What do you think about the closed doors?
Well, there's a saying that goes that whatever, God has for you, if the whole world got together to take it away from you, not give it to you, God still give it to you. So I believe that, whatever's destined to happen, it's going to happen as long as you, believe it, in your heart, you know, then you can achieve it. So that's what I go on.
Do you believe in, do you honestly, Chris, from somebody who has opened up a program and has probably seen a lot of success with some of your clients, do you believe in some of the programs, the live in programs where people go in for 3 months, 6 months, and they do have harm reduction and these residential programs? What do you think about those type of programs? And do you honestly think that they really help?
Yeah. Well, there was see, I don't know. I know when I went through a program because I was also, addicted to drugs. I was addicted to heroin, crack cocaine. And when I went through a program, I went through a therapeutic community, and that
Mm,
was called First Academy
mm,
for individuals recovering sound thinking. It was a program that was, I think, it was the first black-owned substance abuse program, and it was established by in Deer Island House of Correction by three guys that came with jail, and they were heroin addicts, and they weren't receiving the adequate treatment. So they decided to get together amongst themselves and start this program. So, and it was a therapeutic community where you walk in the door, they tore you down, broke you down, and they built you back up to a man. So some of these programs, like therapeutic communities, I believe therapeutic communities work. But the programs where people are, pimping you and sending you out to work, and you're coming back and paying them a check, and I don't, like recovery homes. I think all that stuff is like a hustle because the people are really not getting any treatment in there. But some people are, do good in recovery homes because that's some type of structured environment. So I would have to say it is, based on the individual.
Well, you want to know what, Chris? You're going to figure out in about 10 minutes why I'm asking you all of these questions. And I thank you for answering them honestly, because a lot of times people will say, I support my sister or my brother, or you support what's wrong sometimes. Because I have never touched drugs a day in my life, and I was paroled to a drug treatment facility because I had the behaviors of an addict. I went to jail for stealing and I continued to do it and I was incarcerated 7 times for it. So it's an addiction, right?
All right.
And,
Let's start right there. That is actually in the DSM-5. And for those that don't know what the DSM-5, it's the Bible of therapy where, therapists and psychologists go get their diagnoses. So
mm,
kleptomaniac is actually
mm,
in the DSM-5 as a mental health condition.
mm, mm. So I was sent to a program, and what I noticed is that this program then became harm reduction. And for me, I'm an outsider to a lot of these women because to them, I look normal, right? I didn't have the same problems that they had. I did have an addiction and I didn't disassociate myself with them. In fact, I gravitated towards them because I knew that the struggle was real. And me being incarcerated prior to that, I knew that there was something that I could probably take from this experience. But what I learned is that a lot of the girls would go out and they would get high and they would come back and they would take a urine and then they would put them on restriction, but then one of their friends could go out and bring them the same thing, and then we started to find little baggies in the programs in the house. And so this harm reduction was more harmful than it was good. There was no reduction in the harm. I lost 3 or 4 women from that particular program who I broke bread with and loved like sisters, and they are no longer with us, and they are younger than me. And
Mm,
they were younger than
wow.
me when they passed away.
Wow.
So, in
Yeah.
fact, we can be honest and say that any addict, anybody who can bullshit this system. So how do we, as the people that are trying to help them, become so transparent that they want the help that we're giving them, because they know that we really care about them and we want them to win? Because I've seen all these counselors before, and to be honest with you, excuse my language, they're full of shit. They have
You
one
know,
agenda, but you don't
you,
seem to have that agenda, and that's the reason why I'm asking you this question.
back in the days, they used to give people their substance abuse licenses based on lived experience and how long you worked in the field. It was something they called
Mm,
getting grandfathered in. And those
mm,
were the most effective therapists to the client because they had
yes,
lived experience, right?
yes.
See, sometimes, you know, some people ask, uh, were you ever, on substances? So I find that question asked a lot because sometimes people don't, feel that you can help them if you've never been or walked in their shoes. So, like you said, some people bullshit. Sometimes for them, it's all about a paycheck and the numbers. You can't forget the numbers now. Let's not forget the numbers. A lot of these programs run on numbers because this is what funding calls for.
Yes.
So,
And so then I see you, and I just not just read your bio, but just did a little bit of research on you. Not a little, a lot, because that's what I do. And I recognize that you in fact do the work and beat your feet on the pavement, right? And so what I expected, since your program was open for as long as it has been, was more support. And so when I saw that there could be more people handing you grants, like at this point, people should be kicking down your door to make that happen.
yeah,
Right. You want to know why? Because you have lived experience. So
right.
you can tell a client that comes in, I can tell you right now what's going to happen to you from beginning to end. And it doesn't come from a DSM book. It doesn't come from any of that. It comes from my personal experience. And if I'm going to give you anything, it's going to be the knowledge so that you can understand that we're all in this together.
Right. Have you ever heard of Dr. Omar Reed and Sekou Mems?
Yes.
So that's the philosophy they came from, where a lot of people, they felt that if I can get people that our clients can relate to, then I'm going to hire them. So they hired a lot of people with lived experience. So when I
Mhm.
walked in Pyramid Builders in 2009, no, 2000, sorry, not 19, 2009, I
Mhm.
seen people that I got high with. I seen people that I was locked up with, and I felt like I was at home. I was in a incubator of, people that were looking to change their life around, and the great minds that were in there. It was powerful, and that's why they succeeded for so long. But
It, there you
sometimes this
go.
gets in the way.
It does get in the way, and I'm glad that you haven't allowed it to get in the way for you,
Yeah,
because that's exactly what I'm getting at. I mean, we have to speak we have to speak the and the harsh reality of the fact that everything is about numbers. And you know what? People are dispensable to a lot of people. It's like there's more where that came from.
right.
Let me ask you a question. What's the youngest person you've ever seen come to you and be addicted to drugs and need your help? Because they're getting younger and younger.
Oh yeah. So we got. We're trying to do something with the vaping once the schools open back up. That was last year because I'm very involved in my daughter's school. I'm not going to say what school it is.
Right.
And one of the guys, the counselors, I was talking to him, and I asked him a question like, "How often do you see these little, they're called puff bars?
Mm-hmm.
That's an addiction. Those are vaping things are addictions.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a client that was using huffing. That's also an addiction. You know, and like you said, they're getting younger. They're smoking marijuana because marijuana is legal now. So
But it's
you can
also the
walk into any
gateway.
store, right?
Right.
And they're putting before you know it, in the black community, there's going to be marijuana dispensaries on every corner like their liquor stores. You know, the same drug
And
they were locking us up for years ago, they're now pushing it in our community.
No, Chris, what's actually happening, and see, I can say this because I don't really care about being in trouble. And, people, I interview all different types of people. I'm sure you already know that. And I say the same thing to them. They made things legal that white people started to do. And so instead of locking them up, they said, we'll make this legal
Mm-hmm.
so that it's easier. Do you notice that in a black and brown community, there's a liquor store on every single
Yeah.
corner?
And
Right?
there's a reason for that. That's not because, it's a reason for that. And
Of
I, and you know,
course.
and I, this is what I tell people. I was like, they know something about us that we don't know. And this is why they put all these different things in our path to keep us from reaching up to our highest greatness. Liquor stores, drugs, crime, guns, whatever. Because they know if we get to that height of, thinking, of unity and, pooling our resources, then, it's a wrap.
And I think that if I was in the shoes of a person who was addicted to drugs or any addiction, and I had first come home and I would have known about your program, I would have reached out. Because I think sometimes when you're so desperate for help, you do want to see somebody that looks like you. You do want to see somebody that has some of that shared experience so that they can relate, but also someone who can give you the honest truth about where you're going to end up if you don't stop doing what you're doing.
Right. Like like if they wouldn't have let Trucy Allah into South Bay, I'm sure Trucy Allah saved a lot of people's lives that he grew up with and knew and said, okay, yo, let's go this way. I'm gonna show you how to, get out of here. And he planted the seed, and I'm sure he plants the seed for a lot of people. So we need more Trucy Allahs in those positions to when we see our people coming through the door, even somebody we grew up with, we could take their hand and say, go this way and don't go that way.
Right. And see, Chris, there is, but True C has not just lived experience, but things started to hit close to home for him because he had some people in his family that were incarcerated and things were going on around him in the area he grew up in. So his knowledge for what was happening around him made him more able to help people. And I think
Right.
that that's one component that we're missing in programs, in jails, in courthouses, all of those places. I don't, I honestly, people are like, I just think you just don't want anybody to go to jail. I just think, no, I don't, that's not what it is. If you're going to incarcerate somebody, then what? What happens next? Because they'll still be addicted to drugs. They'll
Right.
still have mental health issues. They'll still be displaced. There'll be all of those things going on with them. So then what? So I think that more importantly, that jail is more harmful for people than it does serving a purpose, unless you're
Right.
just talking about punishment. And it's discipline versus punishment. Now, your program, I want you to tell us how we can get to you, how we can find you. And I'm going to put it in the chat so people can find you. And do you do referrals, Chris?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, which I'm about to give you, you can find the referral form is on the first page. And sometime next month, we're going to put add the 501c3 piece where people can donate to the program.
Can we donate
Um,
now?
um, yeah, I can give you an app, my PayPal for Alpha Good.
Okay,
But
so
I rather really like just wait because right now I'm using a fiscal sponsor.
mhm.
And my 501c3 piece is, should be here, like I said, next month. So I really, would rather, wait till I get my own, tax exempt status and rather than go up under someone else. Because right now I'm using a fiscal sponsor.
Okay, so
But you
what's
can
your
reach us at www.outforgoodinc.com. That's www.outforgoodinc.com.
okay?
And
Do you have
the
a phone number?
617
Mm-hmm.
980 8835.
Do you accept volunteers? Is there
Yeah,
something the community can
definitely.
do to help you? And so would
Definitely.
we go on the website? Would we be able to volunteer that way, or should we call and ask in what ways can
Yeah.
we
You
service
call.
your program? Call.
Right. Call and
Right.
ask.
So everybody in the chat, even those watching this after, because we get a lot of people that are late, they don't watch the live, they watch it after.
How many people in the chat, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, this is Ivy. Ivy always will ask a bunch of questions because she actually works with juvenile offenders. And so for her, it's all about saving lives. And what I recognize is that she comes in, a lot of people will come in and they just watch, they don't say anything, but she's very active and knew I had promoted the show and we knew that you were coming on today. So for her, I think it's also a way to get a connection so that she can figure out how she can help you and how you may be able to service her juveniles
Oh, I
as
love
well.
working with juveniles. I
And
mean,
I think that that's probably I need to connect you with her. She's a great friend of mine. She's like a sister. She does Straight Ahead Ministries. She is the associate director over there, and she deals a lot with juvenile offenders, people that are already in DYS and potentially on their way to an adult prison for the rest of their life.
right.
And and that's why I asked you, how old were some of the people that you saw that come through your door that may have substance abuse issues? Because the youngest I've heard a woman and a man talk about being addicted to drugs, they were 12 years old.
Yep. I love to work with juveniles because I was once in those facilities. That's where it starts at. Starts, in DYS, you learn really how to be a better criminal than all the people I saw in DYS. I ended up seeing in state penitentiaries. So if they had people like myself working with young kids in DYS, showing them that, hey man, this is the route that you could possibly go because I walked that route. Let's go this way. Let's try to go this way.
Right.
Sometimes they just need somebody that they can see that to be a man you got to see a man. So there's a lot of good men out here that I was incarcerated with, that I was locked up with, that I grew up with, that are now doing some great things, that are doing something different. And you know there's
Right.
always help out here for young men.
And I agree with you, but there need to be more people like you. So I would like to give Ivy your information. Ivy, if you're still in the chat, Chris's information out for good is there. I'd like you to reach out to him. I think you guys could be great resources for each other. And Chris, I'd like to help too with out for good. I feel like spreading the word and promoting your program will bring more people to you because again, it's not even about the program for a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people out there who are tired of living the life that they live, but they're not getting the proper help because everything is about let's dose you with this, let's put you in harm reduction that, let's do this, and not enough healing, like you said, from the inside out. So
Right.
your program will help people. Do you do any outsourcing when you don't have the resources to help somebody?
Yep, definitely, always. I got there's a book called Coming Home Directory. This for people that are coming home. You ever heard of the Coming Home Directory?
I've never heard of it.
Can I go get it?
Yes, please do.
Okay, hold on.
Please, I'd love to see it. Everybody, that's Chris Conway. Please reach out to him. His information is in the chat. If you know somebody, one of your family members that is formerly incarcerated and has a substance abuse issue, this guy has a lot of lived experience. He's also a licensed social worker, and he is the operator and owner of Out for Good.
I'm also a notary public also.
Oh, thanks for telling us. I might need one of those.
So this is Coming Home Directory. It has all type of resources in it for people that are getting out. They update it every year.
How
I'm in
can
here.
one
Stacy's
get
in
a
here.
copy?
So they have a website. This is just a book that they put in organizations, and they give to organizations. But they have a website which is cominghomedirectory.org, I believe. Yep, cominghomedirectory.org, www.cominghomedirectory.org. You can also find it on the website on our resources page.
Perfect.
And you could click the link on the resource page on our website, and it'll go right to www.cominghomedirectory.org. They have a plethora of information for people that are getting out: housing, finances, legal, Corey sealing. Also help people seal their Corey too. If they've been home for 7 years for back up. 3 years for a misdemeanor, 7 years for a felony, they are able to seal their Corey in the state of Massachusetts. It's one piece of paper that you send to the commissioner of probation asking him to seal your Corey. If your Corey is sealable, he'll send you back that paper stamped saying that it's sealed. 3 years misdemeanor, 7 years felony. You can get your query sealed in the state of Massachusetts. Don't sleep on that. Please don't.
There's someone in the chat that knows you, Chris. His name is
Hello.
Jonathan Long. He said, my brother, big shout out. We went to Cambridge College and Pyramid Builders together.
See, that's another guy that was talking about that's out here doing great things that, came from the same background. Like me and him went to school together, and I didn't know him from a cold bowl of soup, and me and him just clicked because we, can relate to each other. So what's up, Jonathan? How you doing, brother? Congratulations on your marriage, man,
That's who I'm talking about. So I'm talking about Ivy. That's who I want to connect you with. That's his fiance and future wife.
Cool. Yeah.
So see, it comes full circle. Like you said, God opens a door, no man can shut it. So this is the full circle that we're speaking about. And I feel like there was a reason why. I try to, when people have questions in the chat, I try to ask those questions, instead of going back to you and asking you after the show. But it's important for us to help you. Chris, we want to make you stronger, and there's power in numbers. And I know you have a powerhouse behind you. Stacy Borden, shout out to Stacy, New Beginnings, Reentry, and many other things, Kemia's house, and the things that she does in the community. And I don't ever think she sleeps. I thought I did a lot.
We sat there. Jonathan was there. We sat there at Cambridge College, and she talked our ear off about this program. I'm gonna get me a house. We was like, oh yeah, we support you. Stay, yeah, baby. And we didn't know her from a cold bowl of soup, and we clicked because we all come from that same background.
And she made it happen, just as you did.
She made it happen, right? Exactly.
But there was something that fueled you. That was that lived experience, Chris, that everyone tries to walk away from and say, no, as long as I have a degree, this is all that I need. It's not all that you need in this day and age. This generation is so dang on hard-headed. And you know what they say, a hard head makes a soft behind. But this generation is too hard-headed. So we need somebody with lived experience to not just fill in the gap, but stand in the doorway for a lot of our youth. This is not their fight. They were born into this. They have a lot of trauma, things going on in their life. And so it's up to people like you and like Stacy and me and Ivy and Jonathan to help them to be well from the inside out. And now that we know about Out for Good, I'm going to rep your organization like I work there.
Yeah, we got some just put together some pamphlets. So I would like to drop some off to you so you can have them.
I can come and get them. I definitely will come and get them. If there's anything that I can do to continue to support you, please, you have my number. You know how to reach me. Reach out to me if you're doing an event and you want me to stop by, or, whatever I can do to show support in the community. Maybe do a live while you're doing an event so that people can really see you in action and know what you're doing in the community. Because Stacy has a lot of that. She had an event this weekend and it was successful. Just mentioning these programs is important, and people have to hear it over and over and over again sometimes to know that it works.
Right. So I sat down with state rep China Tyler a couple of weeks ago, and she was really telling me and encouraging me what I needed to do. So these brochures are really, a part of her, because she sat down and it's like, this is what you need to change on the brochure. This is what you need to do. You need to start, getting a little bit of more social media platforms. And, I did all that. I took all her advice, and, it seems to be working out.
That's how it has to work.
Thank you.
And coming on these shows, speaking out on different platforms. I have some people in Africa watching this show. They watch.
Somebody's in Africa? Whoa.
So,
what's going on, my African people?
Somebody in Cape Verde. There's one person in Cape Verde that watches. I get some statistics, and it shows me who watches and where. And I was surprised to see that in other countries, people watch Not Your Normal Conversation. I started this podcast 2 years ago, August 13th, and I never thought that people would be interested. Sometimes I'm on live and I see no one is watching, but then I go back and watch that people have actually watched the show. They watch it the next day, an hour later. People are actually taking notice and saying, hey, maybe there's something that we can do to change. And that's the reason why I keep going, because financially, I don't get anything from this. I put a lot into it, and I put a lot into it because I love people and I want to see people win. I'm tired of us losing this fight from addiction and prison and gun violence. Enough is enough for our community already.
Mental health.
Yes, mental health too. That it's funny how they have a mental health court, but it's not in every court. I feel like mental health court should be in every county,
Just
everywhere.
like drug court should be in every court, giving a person a second chance to, do something with their life. Drug court, mental health court. Exactly.
I agree with you. I
They
agree
got
that
gun court, or they
that's
had
my
it, I
point.
guess.
Right. And you want to know what? Gun court is not a good thing.
Nope,
Because
it ain't.
right, because you have all of these different offenses, but with drug court and mental health court and veterans court, those are actually courts, those systems, those break, there's a big system and then there's a breakdown in the systems. I believe that if they had more courts like that to truly help people, especially people with mental health, I notice when people do drugs, it's because they're no longer taking their meds and they have a mental health issue. So there's that component to this that no one's addressing. These people wouldn't
Right.
be using drugs if they actually knew how to properly take their and dispense their medication so that
Yep,
they can feel
exactly.
well, so that they can deal with their trauma and heal from it.
And sometimes, when it comes to medication, I find that, a lot of people, a lot of doctors are not, doing, medication evaluations. They'll put somebody on a medication, and sometimes the dosage needs to be lessened or increased, and they'll keep the person on medication, on the same medication. Or maybe the person not going back asking, saying that the medication is not working, because at a point in time, your body builds up a tolerance, and the medication is not working.
Right. So that's why we need people like you who can help people who have a voice but don't know how to use it in the right way to stand up to help themselves to so that they can heal and be well. Chris,
Right.
I thank you for taking the time. I know that you're always very busy, but I thank you for allowing me to have an honest and open conversation with you and about
Definitely.
sharing out for good in ways that we can connect and help you. I'd love to get your pamphlets. I actually will be in Boston on Saturday. If we can meet up somewhere, I'll
I
grab a
will
whole bunch
also.
of them.
Yep.
Right. So
Okay.
I would love to meet up with you and also give you a little gift just for being on the show. I always give people something to let them know I appreciate their time and effort. It takes a lot to share your personal story, but also when people see people like you and people like me, it makes them want to change their life and go harder and say, well, if they can do it, then we can do it too. So we're like
Hmm.
the poster boards for change,
That's right.
and there needs to be
Power.
more.
The power of example. That was the name of my first company. Power of example.
Oh, that's not a bad name. I like that.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. That's really nice. Everybody, Christopher Conway from Out for Good. He is the operator and owner of Out for Good. Please check the chat. Reach out to Christopher, even if he can't help you. I'm sure he knows somebody that can. We want to save lives and save you from yourself. And sometimes all you need is a hug that nobody but people with lived experience can offer you.
Yeah.
So until then,
Tap into your greatness, and remember, no matter what anyone tells you, you are great. You are kings, and we are queens. And if we put our mind to anything we do, we can achieve it and get it done.
amen.
Amen.
Everybody, thank you for joining Not Your Normal Conversation tonight. Until next Monday, I'll see you same time, same place. You know how to find me. It's your girl Tawana B with Not Your Normal Conversation signing off. Everyone have a blessed evening, and I'll see you soon.